If you are listening to this on release night and you are in the LA area, there's still time for you to attend Journos, a stream of consciousness news show. We got Brandon and Steven reading the news, and then Mark and myself, Janet Varney and Annie Savage, improvising based on that. Wednesday, July 10th, 7:30 p.m. at the Elysian Theater.
I gotta say, man, this is one of my favorite improv combos. You, me, Janet, and Annie. I always love improvising in this combo. And this time we're doing it instead of monologues. Brandon and Steven are going to be riffing on the news. If you've heard our Journos crossover episodes, it's mind-blowing how smart Brandon and Steven are and how fast and how funny. I cannot wait to play with those guys. I've never done or seen a show like this before. If you're in the area, come down, check it out.
Absolutely.
ElysianTheater.com.
Yes. Get your tickets at ElysianTheater.com. You won't regret it. It's nothing but a good time, folks.
It's an enlightening evening of truth and its consequences.
See you there. Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all.
Best Chex Mix piece.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Mark, this is a back-to-back.
This is a back-to-back. Yeah, our previous episode was a gift in the car from Annie while we were riding somewhere. And I was like, wow, that's a really good idea for an episode. And so we did that one last week. And then this week, this was another Annie idea where we had a bag of Chex Mix in the car. We were on our way to the Dodger game. She flipped the bag of Chex Mix over, and there's all the pieces of, yes, we stopped for food. You're making a face. We stopped for food on the way to Dodger Stadium, which I found out you can do when I tried to sneak hot dogs into Dodger Stadium with a buddy once. We had them wrapped in foil and stuffed down our pants. We bought a bunch of Dodger dogs from the Arco, where they're $1. Took them into the game with us. We set up the metal detector. They lifted up our shirts and we had rows of hot dogs stuffed down our belts. And the security guard there said, you guys know you can bring food in here, right? So that's how we found out that you could bring your own food into Dodger Stadium. Long story endless. We're taking a bag of Chex Mix into the stadium. Annie flips over this exact bag and says, oh, that'd be a good episode, which is a picture of all the different pieces that are in a current bag of Chex Mix. Right. So, this is best Chex Mix piece, double dose. It's a Annie Toe double feature. So thank you.
Now that she's had 2 topics on the show and you live together, she should come be on the show as a guest.
100%.
I wonder which one of us will ask her. My wife's been on multiple times.
Yeah, that's true. She always, your wife comes in and settles all of the ones that we can't quite get to. So maybe then we'll have Annie on call as well, like the expert green room at CNN. Like, quick, we can't figure it out. Bring in the expert.
The confusion that Jennifer enters the room with and the increased confusion that she leaves the room with. Because like she's immediately on the spot. They're like, what's your favorite road sign? And just like the paralysis by analysis begins.
Oh, it's so good. Does KFC have too much breading? What are you guys doing in here?
We're going to record tomorrow, but we're just talking.
Yeah. This is just us having a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much.
Yeah. So this one came from Annie. So thank you, Annie. This is a deep dive that I had to do today. This was one of those ones where I started looking up Chex Mix, and there's some great old versions of Chex Mix. The original Chex Mix recipe came out in 1952. So much butter was involved with they've augmented the recipe over the years. In the original one, it was a full stick of butter. It was a half a cup of butter for 2 cups of Chex Mix. Which is basically like pouring butter over it like you would pour the milk. It very quickly went up to 6 cups of Chex Mix by the early 1960s with a half cup of butter. Now we are at 9 cups of Chex Mix and a quarter cup of butter.
Yeah.
So the ratio of Chex to butter has changed drastically. A few of the different items inside will change throughout and have changed throughout the history of Chex Mix. So if you will allow me, thanks to this deep dive that I wound up taking, it was really more of a spiral. More of a, this was not this is not a proud search history.
While you talk Chex Mix history at me for 10 minutes?
Yes.
That's what we're doing here?
Take a bathroom.
Okay, cool.
No. What I would like to do is I would like to go through the ingredients chronologically because there is a chronology to the Chex Mix. But before we get to that, let's just talk about Chex Mix generally. Yes.
Okay. What got me excited about this is the one I picked because we each pick one when we're doing 2 record days. We hurriedly text one another to figure out what were we going to do. We actually did this ahead of time. This wasn't same day.
Yeah, no, this was enough time to look things up.
The prior episode also suggested by Annie, you were like, I want to do this one. It said she tossed out some really good ones. I was like, what's another one? This is the next thing you said. I immediately jumped on it, said, please, can we? I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I feel like we have fallen down with the exception of the clean slates. This is at its heart what every podcast is, which is 2 or more white guys telling people what to do with their lives. Yep. And we've really fallen down on that instruction of, hey, please let me help with that.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect, cause I think like there's just a lot of debate about Chex Mix. There are pieces that people love and pieces that people absolutely hate. There are pieces that do the exact same thing within the bag, just in different shapes. And and it's so confusing that for anybody who's not a celiac, this episode, although you could have the corn Chex, I guess, if you're a celiac, this is going to be a real just head clearer for you. You're going to we're lifting that anxiety around the bag of Chex Mix and making it melt like the 20 pounds of butter they used in the 50s, back when diets were eat a tub of cottage cheese.
Yeah, that'll smooth your inside so that the food slides through faster.
Yeah. Or like in the 80s when my grandmother just had toast and tuna fish.
That was it?
For like a month. She was not a heavy woman. She was 5 foot soaking wet. And,
wait a minute, 5 foot soaking wet.
Yeah, she had a giant afro.
Okay. I was going to say, do you get taller when you,
She was a troll doll. Did I not mention that?
She was one of those capsules that you put in the bathtub and then soaking wet, she's a sponge dinosaur.
Didn't you eat one of those one time? You gave me some to eat and I didn't.
Well, they're capsules, so they're like pill form.
Oh, you want to ingest them in your body and have the Hulk grow in there.
We didn't chew them up. What are we, monsters? No, I just want to see a red triceratops in the toilet when I'm done.
Yeah, but it actually is blue in the capsule. Mark, go to the doctor.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I don't feel good. What were we talking about? Now I got
the history of Chex Mix. You want to go back?
I want to go chronologically. I want to go back to the beginning of Chex Mix. I'm not going to go as far back as the 1930s and the invention of, oh no, you know what? Before this, I thought of a question that I wanted to ask you. And this might be just a mini topic within the episode.
I'm excited.
Are you a grab a handful or pick out what you like?
Chex Mix. Pick out what I like because there are ones that are a waste of my time. And I don't want those.
Let me ask you this, Hal Lublin. In any scenario, are you a pick out the ones you want or a Chex Mix at home pick out the ones you want? If you are at a party, are you going to deprive the rest of the party of all of the rye crisps because you want to pull those out?
You know me well. Rye crisps are my favorite.
I know they are.
No. I'll eat the rest of it, but like I'll definitely try to get a scoop with like more rye crisps in it. It's, it's not all scoops of Chex Mix are not created equally.
You can eyeball peripheral vision. You can be holding a conversation at a party and peripheral vision eyeball that this handful is going to have some of those rye crisps.
Yes.
They're big. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I have favorite M&M colors, but that's really just the order that I eat them when I have them. I'm not trying to get all greens and oranges.
Right. No, what I'm trying to do is just get my hand by the end of this handful is going to have one of each color. That's how I do M&Ms.
Interesting. Yeah.
I grab a handful of M&Ms and I look and I see what colors I've got. and I eat them all until I have one of every color in my hand. And then I look down and I go, all right, which order are you guys going down in?
By the way, you'll appreciate this. And this is the only way I can work it in. But the opposite of eating M&Ms is exercise. And I've been exercising lately. I got this Fitbit. It's a Fitbit Charge 6. They're not paying us, but I sure wish they would because I had to pay for this. And so I've been, I started walking every day. Now I've started walking and jogging. And I'll do like 90 minutes. I wake up at 5 a.m. I go for 90 minutes before work and I come home, shower, work. And I've noticed where I go, which is where Jennifer's been going. There are two ladies who walk together. They both wear all black. One of them is in an exercise outfit. The other one looks like she just stepped out from an Italian funeral to go on a walk.
Is she in the heels too? She's in all black except the soles of her shoes are red.
I gotta look tomorrow and see
Amazing.
For sure. But it's like the big hat and the glasses, the sunglasses that look like they are formal sunglasses, just out like. Literally, they dropped her out of The Godfather into this track that
Why do I have the feeling that the woman who is dressed in just the tracksuit, if this is a mafia situation, she is the infinitely more powerful one of the two of them?
Oh, for sure. You have to dress up to exercise with her.
Exactly. She's like,
you want to come and dress up? You want to come and exercise with me? I want you wearing heels. I want you wearing a dress.
Yes, Donna Corleone.
You put your dress on. Hey, look at me. Look at me. You put your dress on. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna walk 4 miles. I want you in Louboutins. Put those heels on.
May your first pole vaulter be a champion pole vaulter. Anyway.
Can I say this? Can I say this without sounding disingenuous because it is coming after you mentioning the exercise? I was going to comment on it when we opened up this Zoom call, my friend. I can see it in your general demeanor that you've been exercising and breathing some new joys in the world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's delightful.
Thank you.
Now let's eat snacks.
Yeah. So take me back.
Right.
Take me back to early Chex Mix.
Taking you back.
What's in the flavor graveyard?
In the flavor graveyard of Chex Mix, it's really the original Chex Mix recipe is only a couple of ingredients. It is Chex Mix. Well, I'll take you back further. 1930s, the Ralston Pillsbury Company creates these Ralston little biscuits. Then that company creates the cereal Chex. They create rice Chex in the beginning of the 1950s. Or somewhere between the 30s and the 50s, they create rice Chex. And then those little Ralston bites become wheat Chex. They're like, okay, we've got the rice Chex. Now these, we're going to change the pattern a little bit so that we have the waffle, the little waffle pillow, the same as the rice Chex. And now wheat Chex are that as well. Later on in the 1950s come corn Chex around 1959. So the original recipe is half and half, rice Chex and wheat Chex and peanuts. In 1952, Life magazine publishes the first Chex Mix recipe, and it is 6 tablespoons butter or margarine. Whatever it was a stick. It was a whole stick.
Yeah, 6 tablespoons is you're pretty close. I think commonly now it's 8 tablespoons. It's like 16 tablespoons for an entire stick, and they break it up into 8 and 8.
Gotcha. So this actually, the one I'm looking at now, most of this is coming from aggregating over the internet a series of these advertisements from the 50s and 60s. The original version from 52 I don't have, but I'm looking at a 60s version. The original recipe is just rice Chex, wheat Chex, mixed nuts, butter, seasoned salt, and Worcestershire sauce. That is it. That is the original recipe. So let's start with those ingredients. Which one do you want to start with? Because we can talk ingredient by ingredient. We've got rice Chex, wheat Chex, and mixed nuts.
Are we choosing out of these?
No, let's just to talk about them. Well, go pros, cons.
I like Chex. Like everything I would add as a child, I would add sweet and low to it because it wasn't sugar cereal and I couldn't have sugar cereal. So I would add sweet and low. Now I add stevia to my Trader Joe's
Chex
flakes and dried strawberries.
No, I do like flakes and we had a big giant, like one of those big double boxes of, flakes and strawberries. We had the Kellogg version.
I like a Chex. But honestly, I don't even think it's the best cereal in its own category. But I don't think the superior cereal still exists.
Wait, what cereal in its own category? What are you talking, like?
Do you remember
in its own
Crispix?
category within Chex? Oh, yeah, I remember Crispix. They were like, hexagon. Hexagon
rice,
Chex.
Rice and corn, like one side was one side was the other.
That's
way better
right.
cereal. Like it just like they figured out what Chex was doing and said, how can we? You made a biplane, we're going to make a Blackbird SR-71.
You're going to make an Osprey.
Yeah.
How did they stitch those? Because it was Crispix's Crispy Times too. That was their whole deal. You would have rice on one side. Well, if it's all the same, meal, if it's all rice meal or wheat flour or cornmeal, that's one thing. But that is double-sided. That's the rice version on one side and the wheat version on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know the history of Crispix, but now that you mention it, I'm pretty sure that when I was a kid and my mom would make it, it was always Crispix.
Yeah, because they're bigger too.
They are. They're slightly bigger. They're hexagons. And it's the rice Chex and the wheat Chex in one cereal. But we're talking about Chex Mix.
Yeah.
But we can put a pin in Crispix because I want to ask, that's another question to ask in a little while.
Yeah.
Between those two, do you have a favorite between the rice Chex and the wheat Chex?
Not really. I feel like I had rice Chex more as a kid. I think they're fine when you get a whole piece, which feels like that's not true. Actually, they have pretty decent structural integrity.
Mm-hmm.
It absorbs obviously a lot of the seasoning and Worcestershire sauce and butter and stuff. That will penetrate because it's a cage to trap those things. And it's got a good crunch to it. It's like I don't love it on its own, but as part of if you're taking a small handful, putting a couple pieces in your mouth, I think it's an essential part to have in there because it adds a depth of texture, a little depth of flavor, and it always
this is the rice,
good
the rice specifically.
The rice, the wheat too. I mean, all of those pieces are dried out cereal, so they're not, none of it's not like the wheat one is soft or the rice one is soft or the corn one is soft. They're all crunchy. The
rice one I think has a little bit of a lighter crispiness to it. The wheat one the wheat one almost feels like, and maybe because of its birth as shredded wheat, this is just what wheat Chex are like. It kind of feels like a tiny Triscuit to me. And as we know, Triscuit is the superior snack cracker.
So good. Not woven, layered. You'd think it's woven. It looks woven, but it's not.
It looks woven. It's the waffle shape. Added much later is the corn Chex.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like structurally, out of all of these, the corn Chex is going to hold up the best. If you're going to find little tiny flakes and pieces at the end, it's going to be the rice Chex and the wheat Chex. You may have like, ancient ruins of a corn Chex, but you'll still be able to make out that was one of the corn Chex pieces.
It also has not the most distinct, but maybe the most depth, the most pop as a flavor. So it adds more to a bite that it's a part of.
Yeah. Because corn chips, a classic.
Yeah. It's also the only flavor that's not repeated anywhere. There's wheat in there. There are ricier elements and rice Chex don't really have a strong flavor to them. I don't think, but the corn kind of stands alone. There are no corn nuts in there. I'm sure you could make it with corn nuts if you wanted to, but that's not part of this isn't a homemade recipe. We're going to go off of what would be in that blue bag that you and Annie bought on your way to the Dodgers game.
Well, what I figured we would go off of is all of these original, like, make it yourself recipes. We won't get in the timeline to pre-packaged Chex Mix until the mid 1980s. So for 30 years, Chex Mix was just something that you made at home, which I guess begs the question, which of these pieces is it easiest to screw up? You know what I mean? Is there one that's going to burn faster if you leave it in too long? Is there one is there a Chex piece in particular that user error becomes an element for?
Well, no, because you don't bake Chex Mix. You have to melt the butter, but you can do that on a stovetop and then you mix it all together. So nothing's getting burned.
Right. The original recommendation, by the way, was 350 degrees for 20 minutes. Yeah. That was in the 1952 edition. It was shortly thereafter augmented to 250 for an hour. So you're just kind of lightly and slowly toasting everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
People were burning the original version. When they would pull it out, their Chex pieces would be burnt.
And also using so much butter that it's going to be soggy unless you're necessitating a baking. Now you're taking 6 tablespoons of butter or margarine.
Yeah.
You heat it up. I like to melt butter on the stovetop now that I've figured out how to do it. As we were reminded yesterday, the microwave will pop butter if you do it for too long.
Oh, yeah. I should start melting it on the stove. I've been just putting it in a little Pyrex and sticking it in the toaster oven for a few minutes while I do other stuff.
That works too. The stovetop is good. All you have to do is it's a lower heat and you keep stirring it. And that's how you stop it from browning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look at this. See, aren't we learning things today?
Yeah.
We got this with Mark and Hal. You know what? We deserve some Chex Mix. Which piece am I going to reach for? So I want to also talk about nuts in Chex Mix. Do you like nuts in your Chex Mix?
I don't really care. I don't like, if I make a homemade trail mix, which is not Chex Mix at all, there are 3 things: peanuts, raisins, and chocolate chips. I don't care. If there's an almond in there, I'll eat an almond. The only nut I will not eat now is cashews because I got food poisoning the last time at cashews, and now, much like TGI Fridays, it's ruined for me.
But you would put peanuts in your Chex Mix.
I guess. I like that the version now has no nuts in it.
Well, that's the thing, because that's a big difference now, I think, between the homemade version and the store-bought version. The store-bought version does not have nuts in it. I could not find information about whether it did back when it was released in 85. It does make sense for nut allergies to not have the nuts in it. Plus, peanuts and other nuts being heavier, they're going to fall more to the bottom of the bowl or the bottom of the bag.
Right.
To be honest, the cynic in me thought that the only reason that I was like, I wonder when they got rid of them in the Chex Mix bag, because everything else is something that can be manufactured pretty easily at a General Mills plant. The peanuts would be something that would probably be a big expense for them. It was probably the most expensive ingredient. Peanuts or mixed nuts. I'm not sure when Planters created deluxe mixed nuts and got rid of the peanuts in a version of their mixed nut combo. But if this was back in the 1950s, you're going to get, pecans and almonds and peanuts in that classic Planters mix.
By the way, do you want the 1985 recipe for Chex Mix?
No, not till we get to 1985. We've got that one on here. We will get to that. The one that was in the bagged version.
Yes. Who knows? I mean, these are all just sort of like, I don't know, wet farts. Like they're like, here's a bowl of Chex. Here's some nuts in there. And then you add some seasoning and some Worcestershire sauce and butter.
Yes. But through the years, other things have been added on. We've talked a little about nuts. We've talked a little about the 3 different Chex pieces that would be involved. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the variations and the elements that were added later on in the 70s and 80s. And then we will, if there's 1 or 2 pieces that really have come up to the surface for us, we can discuss those. And we will determine once and for all the ultimate Chex Mix piece. How's that sound?
Great.
Let's do it. We'll be right back.
Yay.
City Pop to me is like a feeling.
City Pop is beautiful music.
It's music that makes me emotional.
There's so many different sounds that fall into the City Pop category.
It just feels very home to me.
We're just about wrapped on our inaugural season of Primer. If you didn't know, Primer is a new podcast that explores music from outside the English-speaking world. And Vulture called us one of the best podcasts of the year. Our first season covered Japanese city pop, and you just heard a few of our past guests share what the genre means to them. Learn more about the world of city pop and listen to some cool tunes. And if you like what we're doing, you can make a one-time contribution and help us reach our goal to produce a second season about a new genre. Support Primer over at MaximumFun.org/Primer.
Hi, I'm Jesse Thorne, the founder of Maximum Fun, and I have a special announcement. I'm no longer embarrassed by my brother and me. For years, each new episode of this supposed advice show was a fresh insult, a depraved jumble of erection jokes, ghost humor, and frankly, this is for the best, very little actionable advice. But now, as they enter their twilight years, I'm as surprised as anyone to admit that it's gotten kind of good. Justin, Travis, and Griffin's witticisms are more refined, like a humor column in a fancy magazine. And they hardly ever say bazinga anymore. So, after you've completely finished listening to every single one of all of our other shows, why not join the McElroy brothers every week for My Brother and Me?
All right. It's the 70s.
Yeah.
Disco.
Ooh,
cocaine.
The swinging 70s. Disco
Cinema
and cocaine.
Nouveau.
All three of those actually ingredients that were added to Chex Mix in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Disco, of course, being gravy and cheese, and cocaine being obvious.
Grab a bowl of Chex Mix and come up with a new business idea.
We should start a band.
Rub the corn checks on your gums.
Cut all these corn checks into little tiny pieces with this razor blade.
Each bag, 3 bag proof of purchases gets you a small hand mirror.
So in the 1970s, and one of the ways that the way I discovered some of these editions was a delightful grandma that I found on YouTube who's like, hi kiddos. Well, I'm going to give you a history lesson and make my Chex Mix. The version she uses is from a 1972 tin that they would give away. Her mom got one because she ordered so many boxes of Chex that, and underneath the lid, that was where they put the recipe for official. They've always called it original Chex Mix recipe, even though it's changed a million times through the years. Mm-hmm. And around this time is when the pretzels were added. So pretzel rods make their appearance around this era for the first time in the world of Chex Mix. What do we think about the pretzels, Philly boy?
Much needed in there.
Yeah?
You don't have to add salt now because you have something that brings salt.
Oh, they're still telling you to add plenty of seasoned salt. And the other addition at this time, it was previously just seasoned salt. They've also now added garlic salt and onion salt to the mix, or garlic powder and onion powder.
Onion powder, yeah. Big difference. Big difference.
Well, if you're getting your salt from those, it tells you there's lots of little asterisks on many of the advertisements that are like, if you're using salted peanuts, reduce this by this much. If you're using, so in whatever proportion, there's onion powder and garlic powder now added along with the Worcestershire sauce and Lowry's seasoned salt. So talk about the pretzels.
By the way, one substitute thing in a recipe is fine. Like, hey, if you don't like this, then use it. Like, if you don't like, there are a couple of recipes I've made recently that are like, if you don't want to do all these different herbs, you can get a packet of taco seasoning, put it in there. Great. Okay, good.
Super easy.
But if you're going to use more peanuts, use less of that. I don't want to have to do any more math than I already have to make something. So I don't appreciate
it's just
that.
to get the same amount of salt.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Like they cared. Like they really cared. Slapping their thighs in those yogurt commercials with spoons. I remember what you did. I'll never forget. No, I like the pretzels. Pretzels are fun time party snack. I think there are 2 different. Am I not mistaken? Am I mistaken that now there is a grid pretzel and a circle pretzel in modern Chex Mix?
That is in modern Chex Mix. There's a circle pretzel and a grid pretzel. Originally, it was pretzel sticks, the little 2-inch long skinny pretzel sticks that we talked about ad nauseum in that particular episode. And that's something that's going to break the whole time. Put those in there. You'd be hard pressed to find a full length one of those.
You can't mix it
after mixing the bowl.
Gingerly. You have to mix it by individually placing the pieces in different spots.
Which you can tell was done for this bowl of Chex Mix in one of these ads that's like, look at this bowl of Chex Mix. I'm like, that's not a bowl of Chex Mix. Those pretzel sticks are complete.
The one with Sally and Charlie Brown and Lucy?
Oh, yeah. That one and the one that's just a big picture of the bowl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Oh, yeah. That weird octagonal bowl. With the largest almonds you've ever seen in your life.
And huge pecans.
Like, are those dates?
Yeah. Yeah, the nuts in this bowl are huge.
You can't put too many different varieties of nuts in a mix like this. Because then it becomes mixed nuts with a few Chex and some pretzels in there. You are not the star of this almonds and walnuts and pecans and.
Well, they were evenly matched at the beginning. Peanuts. Remember, there were only 2 ingredients at the beginning. It was just Chex and nuts.
I know. And that was a mistake. That's the reason we don't do that anymore. They figured out how to make it better. And it was fewer nuts, more Chex, and then a bunch of weird stuff.
And now the nuts aren't even in it anymore.
No.
I feel like the nuts are the fading vaudevillian as talkies are appearing on the scene, just looking around the dressing room going, we used to act with our bodies. While taking powder off with cold cream.
Oh, it's Limelight?
It's Limelight. Yeah. It's Limelight or Sunset Boulevard. Yeah. What was her line in Sunset Boulevard? We didn't need words. We had faces. something like that. Delightful. Yeah, but no, I don't mind. I don't begrudge nuts still wanting to have their time in the spotlight.
I do. It's too much.
All right.
Too many different, pick one and have it in there. If it's my choice, nuts.
Peanut. I think peanuts is probably the correct choice.
Virginia peanuts unsalted.
Oh, Virginia peanuts unsalted, which means you can use the correct amount or the labeled amount of Lowry's seasoned salt if you use the unsalted.
They get to pick up the little pieces of everything. They get to pick up all the flavor.
Yeah.
As opposed to coming in with an agenda. Don't bring your food in with an agenda.
You think that the pecans and the almonds are coming in with an agenda?
No, I just think it's enough. Yeah. I don't like almonds that much. I don't think any of us do, really. I think we have to like them.
Yeah.
Because it's healthy. I should have some almonds. Really, you shouldn't have that many, I guess, technically, from a nutritionist standpoint.
And from a water supply sense.
Yeah.
Water
exactly.
supply standpoint.
They're a resource hog.
Yeah, you had your moment, almonds.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're resource hog. You're the Bitcoin of the nut world.
Then you got the ones. What is that? It's not a macadamia nut. Maybe it's like a pecan or something.
Look, the one if your mixed nut mix that you use for your Chex Mix includes macadamia nuts in it, get out of here with that, fancy pants.
There's the one nut that always has a little bit of the skin on it. So it looks like 1 million years BC. It looks like Raquel Welch in 1 million years BC. It's got the little skin bikini.
Is that the Spanish peanut?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Maybe. No, It looks like a giant. You see it in the bowl. It's right next to an almond.
Hold on. Let me open that picture.
It's in the middle, look at the dead center of that bowl.
In the giant bowl picture.
And the octagon.
That's a cashew. Oh no, that's a hazelnut.
Hazelnut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's a hazelnut.
Go naked or go clothed. Pick one. Not interested. Get out of there, hazelnut.
It was also in the late 70s that they added a fourth Chex Mix, which brought the total from 6 to 8 cups of Chex. This was Bran Chex. As we all know from this show, Bran is the best muffin, but we don't know if it was the best Check. Is a single one a Check or a Chex?
Yeah, it's a Check.
Chex.
Is it even around anymore?
No, Bran Chex is not around anymore.
Then get out of my bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. Get out of our bowl. You can't stay in here now. You can't sit with us.
Yeah.
And now I get us to 1981. It's 1981. We are at, I believe it's in New England. We are at a bakery called Gardetto's. And the bakery at Gardetto's, they have started taking the little remnants from slicing their breads, a dark rye in this particular case, and they've begun toasting them, mixing them to create their own version of a Chex Mix kind of snack party mix. Their version contains sesame sticks and pretzels and these little rye crisps, and I believe a couple other doodads in there that you'd see in Chex Mix. But this begins to become popular in the early 1980s. And in the mid 1980s, Gardetto's moved from just selling their little bags of this mix in the stores to actually selling them in vending machines. And Gardetto's mix blows up. Gardetto's mix is picked up by General Mills and is distributed throughout the country. I say this to ask two things. To point out also, it was around this time that in the mid 1980s, that is when Chex Mix, seeing the success of the Gardetto's rye crisp, began adding bagel chips into their Chex Mix. You can see that on the Peanuts ones. That one's from 1996. That particular
one with Snoopy.
Yeah. It was somewhere between 85 and 91 that they added the bagel crisp to this. Now, because both companies are owned by General Mills as of 1999, Gardetto's and Chex Mix are made by the same company. So not only in a current bag of Chex Mix do we have the bagel chips, but we also have the rye crisp. Two opportunities for the same little flat disc of goodness. How? Tell me about this flat disc of goodness to you.
Look, I love bagels. A bagel chip is okay. It's just okay.
Mm-hmm.
Its best life is probably in a bag or bowl of Chex Mix.
Mm-hmm.
And what it shares with the rye is that they both absorb flavor extremely well as a piece of bread or a cracker would. and they provide a really good crisp bite to them. I prefer those are the two pieces. Like, I would just eat those two pieces. I don't care about anything else. I hate
Which is why in 2007, Gardetto's released a version it was like Gardetto's Signature Select, which is like, guess what you're doing when you reach in the bowl and just take the rye crisps, because it was just a big bag of the rye crisps.
Good. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I want to crunch that up and put it on a salad. You can do a lot of stuff with that.
Here's my only problem with it. Because it is such a great vehicle for all of the Worcestershire sauce and in some variation soy sauce, but we won't go into all of that. And the salt and the garlic powder and the onion powder, it can be too much of a flavor punch. It can be too salty, specifically.
Says who?
Says me, says who?
Says you, I guess.
Yeah. I think sometimes the little rye crisp runs the risk of being too salty.
But you don't like the breadstick, do you? That crappy breadstick?
No, the crappy bread. Okay, here's another one. So in 2013, this is where Gardetto's and Chex start to get weird together. Gardetto's always had the sesame stick, which I loved, but was quite divisive. They removed the sesame stick and added the little breadstick, the little squiggle breadstick. Official name, squiggle breadstick. They just took the sesames off of them.
Oh, throw that thing in the garbage.
And now the squiggle breadstick from Gardetto's, it is in Chex Mix as well. So they're really starting to blend the two in many ways. You don't like the breadstick. You're shaking your head vigorously. I think it doesn't offer much. Yeah.
It's not quite crunchy enough. It's not quite strong enough. It's not quite flavorful enough. It can go.
Can I tell you what I wish?
Taking up space for the bagel chips and the rye chips.
Yeah. If those are your bread, there's a lot of bread options in this. There's a cereal option. There are cereal options, bread options, and nut options.
Yes.
I got to say though, one thing that I really wish is that the sesame sticks were a part of proper Chex Mix and not just Gardetto's. Because I love those little sesame sticks. Something that you reach for, that's one thing that I reach for. Because it has just a little bit of a different flavor than the rest of the bowl, but it goes well with the rest of the bowl. But if you get a handful that's got the sesame piece in it, like you could put a handful of Chex Mix in your mouth and not know what was in that particular bite. Unless you got one of those sesame sticks. It's like, oh, I got a little bit of a sesame stick in there.
Yeah. It's not my flavor of ice cream, but I understand what you're saying.
And it's a moot point anyway, because it's not technically part of Chex Mix. But what is officially part of Chex Mix, once they went into prepackaged versions in the mid 80s, and since then, they now have 10 different variations of Chex Mix out there. They have, just real quickly, original bold cheddar, sour cream and onion, honey barbecue, honey nut, turtle, dark chocolate, jalapeno cheddar, and ghost pepper. I think within these, there's so much happening, but I think there are a couple of ingredients that I think should be on this list from a couple of those variations. Chocolate? Yes, these little discs of dark chocolate, though they might tend to overpower the Chex Mix. Caramel corn, which gives the sweet and salty. Why are you shaking your head at the caramel corn?
Get your cereal out of my fiddle faddle. Get out of there.
That's true, I guess,
Fundamentally, we're like, hey, is Chex Mix not good enough for you? Here, we made it so spicy you'll be on the toilet shooting flames out of your patoot. Do you need dessert? Do you want Chex Mix, but make a dessert? Here's some chocolate, and here's some caramel corn.
Well, let me throw this one out, Hal, because this one might jump into the bread category. I know people who put this in their Chex Mix in their home version to give it a little variety. Not a lot of people can, readily and easily just have cheese powder laying around. But the Cheez-It cracker that frequently gets put, that is definitely a part of the cheddar Chex Mix. I get excited when I see a Chex Mix that also has the addition of Cheez-Its in there.
Yeah, because you can pick all the Cheez-Its out and eat them because they're better than anything in a Chex Mix. But that Chex Mix is that Cheez-Its keeping low company these days.
Yeah. I feel like it's when a baseball player's doing a rehab stint in the minors. That's the Cheez-It coming in. It's like, look, this Cheez-It just threw its shoulder out. It's just here for a couple of games. Enjoy it. It's going to be the best thing about this whole experience. but then it's going back with the rest of the Cheez-Its after that.
Now batting for the Pismo Beach butt cheeks, Mike Trout.
Yeah, exactly.
You baseball fans know what that is. Mike Trout is the Cheez-Its, the Pismo Beach butt cheeks. That's the Chex Mix.
Yeah. Oh, I love Chex Mix. I don't want to throw shade at Chex Mix in the Chex Mix episode.
Well, then you shouldn't have brought those heavenly Cheez-Its in here.
Oh my gosh, if we pick, that's terrible. That's like saying that the best minor league baseball player of all time is Clayton Kershaw because he did one day with the Quakes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, geez, Bryce Harper's they've all had rehab assignments.
Yeah.
They've all played in the minors, Mark.
Oh, I've got bobbleheads over my shoulder from both Dodgers and Rancho Quakes. I love going to Quakes games. You can pay $10 and sit right behind the players. It's great.
Rancho Cucamonga, right?
Rancho Cucamonga. Yeah, it's great.
Hey, let me know next time you go to a game because we could go to that. There's a restaurant out that way. They've recreated Soup Plantation.
Soup Plantation. I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
I gotta go there.
Yeah. It's Soup Plantation, but with a way better name.
Yeah. Terrible name. Great soup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we should stick to the standard bag that people know and love.
All right.
That gets us up.
That gets us up to the current bag, the current bagged version of Chex Mix.
I don't have a list in front of me. Can I guess what's in there? Let's see how many of them I can get. How many ingredients are there? 10?
7. That's it.
7.
There's only 7.
Okay. Corn Chex, wheat Chex, rice Chex.
No
rice Chex?
No rice Chex. I just noticed that while we were talking about rice Chex earlier. Why aren't there rice Chex in this? It's literally the very first ingredient.
Nobody needs that. All right. So
what do you mean nobody needs it? You can't take the original. They took the nuts out and they took the original Chex out.
And now it's so much better. All right. Corn Chex, wheat Chex. Circle pretzel.
This is a ship of Theseus of Chex Mixes.
Circle pretzel, grid pretzel. Are those two separate? Okay.
Or those are 4.
That piece of breadstick, the bagel chip, and the rye chip. Is that everything?
6, 7. That's all 7.
All right. Yeah. That's everything that's in there.
Corn Chex, wheat Chex, rye chip, bagel chip, square pretzel, round pretzel, squiggle breadstick. So here's what we're going to do. They're each going to duke it out in their respective category.
Okay.
Corn Check versus wheat check. Corn Check. It's pillowier.
Okay.
It's pillowier. It holds up a little better. It's lighter.
I was sitting here thinking I do like a wheat check in there.
The wheat check is a little thin.
Corn Check's fine. Yeah, Corn Check's fine.
Thin, it's a little small. Look, here, I'll show you right now.
I argued for it earlier, so I'm not going to
but I'm going to show you comparatively.
Yeah, that wheat check is the little brother.
Yeah, exactly.
The little sibling.
Even though the Corn Check is younger. All right, so winner of that one between the two checks is the Corn Checks.
Corn Check.
Let's go bagel chip or rye chip.
Rye chip.
Yeah, rye chip. Because that's the one I didn't even know the 90s version was add bagel chips to it. But that's just because it was before they acquired Gardetto's. So they could actually put the rye chip into the Chex Mix.
Yeah.
And yet somehow it's like the understudy got to do the show and then the star came back, but both the understudy and the star are on stage.
I'm looking at Ken sent us a picture of the Gardetto special request bag, which is the garlic rye chips.
Delightful.
And Mr. Gardetto looks a lot like Al Capone from this distance. Too much. Maybe Gardetto, maybe we didn't get too into the tax evasion stuff, that he didn't set this up as a shell company. I think there may be more Capone money out there in Gardetto's.
Well, guess what? Here's your twist. It wasn't Mr. Gardetto. It was Mrs. Gardetto was the one that was in charge.
Yeah,
she's running things. That is both factually true and the image that I have in my head of that woman jogging in the sweats. That's Mrs. Gardetto.
That's Mrs. She's the heir to the Gardetto fortune.
And you know who that walking with her, all dressed up in her Italian finest was?
Who?
That was Sophia Chex. She was asking if Gardetto's could be included in the Chex Mix.
Weren't they they're originally Chexarelli when they came over? They had to change their name.
They shortened it at Ellis Island.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those, yeah. Okay. For next, we got to go on to, the final of the binaries here, which is round pretzel versus square pretzel.
The breadstick's not going up against anything because we know it doesn't have a chance.
We know the breadstick is just happy to be invited to the party.
The grid pretzel's better than the ring pretzel. The ring pretzel's fine, but the grid pretzel is just more pretzel. More pretzel. pretzel.
It is more pretzel, but and I realize that the structural integrity that comes with the square pretzel that looks like a little window frame. It's a square, but it's also got the grid. So it's cut into 4 pieces.
Yeah.
It looks more like a Chex piece. So thematically it's dressed for the part.
Yeah.
And there's just something kind of fun about the little round pretzel though. You know what I mean?
I don't dislike the round pretzel. I just think that the grid is better.
The grid does give you more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Pretzel wise.
Picking one over the other doesn't mean the other one is terrible.
I'm not going to lie.
I think the grid is better.
I'm not going to lie. This is going to win a semifinal. It's not going to win the final.
No,
I
mean, nothing's beating the rye chip.
Not yet.
What are you going to introduce? Cocaine? Is that coming back in?
No,
would be very excited.
I'm going to introduce the one ingredient that has been a part from the beginning of the Chex Mix recipe, but is not a part of the bagged version, and that is nuts.
Pass.
Yeah. I don't think it beats either the original Chex piece, the corn Chex, or the Gardetto's Rye Crisp.
Yeah.
In fact, I would argue that the rye chip is such a good addition to like a party snack mix that General Mills bought the company that invented it just so they could add it to Chex Mix.
Yeah. People of the world, isn't it funny that we're sitting here talking about the best piece in Chex Mix when the truth is you need to go out and get yourself a bag of Gardetto's Special Request because it's just the garlic rye chips. So you don't have to feel like a heel at the party for trying to get more of them than other people, although I don't care. You put it out there for people to enjoy. That's how I enjoy it. I want those rye crisps. And the rest I will feed to your dog, cat, or baby. That's just the way it is. I don't want those pieces. I don't need them in my life.
Hal's just walking around parties giving peanuts to babies.
Yeah, it's so good that General Mills bought the company because they bought Chex Mix and going like, oh, well, now we got to get the best piece to put in there. Like, it's a number one right now. King of New York. Gardetto's garlic rye chips are the best ingredient in Chex Mix, asked and answered. Oh, there you go. Enjoy that. Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? You like it?
Mm-hmm. I broke my rule.
That's good. And your tooth. Sorry.
Well, this topic is closed. Sorry, that took a second. I had to finish swallowing that so I wouldn't sound like I had Gardetto's in my teeth. And I'm still doing it. This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. Please reach out to us via email at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com or
reach out to us on the social medias at We Got This Podcast. On Instagram, we are at We Got This Show, and our Facebook group is the real place to share your Chex Mix recipes. What do you put in that wacky Chex Mix? Go to Facebook.com/group/We Got This Podcast and let us know. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, who eats a mix by eating the pieces that he likes less first, and then he eats the ones he likes last after those are gone. Also, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And of course, thanks to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, who are, for us, the Gardetto's Rye Chip in the Chex Mix of our lives and our podcast careers. So thank you for being the most delicious part. To you, we say, thank you, thank you, thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows supported
directly
by you.